Hey, welcome back everybody. Today we're going to be rebuilding the pump. Here in front of me I've got all the steps that we need. First 10 steps anyway. I've got all my clean parts laid out. And here's what we've got. We've got a set of calipers. We're going to need those. That's the pump head there coming across. We've got some tools. Those are all the pieces that are required to go back in it. We've got some grease, some wrenches, some clean diesel in a pan, and of course all the new seals and gaskets that need to go on it. Of course, then the rest of the shop is set up. So the reason I'm making this video today is the other people online, although they provided me information that was helpful, there was no sort of conclusive, here's how you put it back together approach to it, and also nothing filmed in a way where you could see what was actually happening. First thing we're going to do is check the footage to make sure that you can see what I want to see. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take the head here, and as you can see, there's a hole through the center of this. Now what happens is this plunger, these little plungers, they slide in that hole. For a better angle down here, the plunger slides down into that hole, and it's not going to do it right now on camera obviously, but it's supposed to slide in there pretty easily. I just must have the wrong one in because they're side specific. And once that's in, then this roller sits down over top in a shoe, and what happens is it gets pushed outwards by the plunger, and then it pushes back in on the plunger. And when it pushes back in on the plunger, and that's because of the camering, when it hits the lobe and pushes the plunger back in, that fuel goes back through that little hole we saw in the center and into or out of one of the orifices. So you see there's the hole, there's the bore, and there's a tiny little hole right in the center there. Do you see that? So that hole, the fuel comes up through there, pulled from the transfer pump. Through with the transfer pump will sit in here, and it pulls up through there. As this rotor spins, it then blocks off the port it came in from. It contacts the lobe on the plunger here, and then the fuel is forced back through, down through the hole, and out one of the given hard lines. Feel free to leave me any comments. I'll answer any questions as best I can. I'm no expert, but I feel this information should be more readily available than it is on the internet currently. However, Chalmers.com and Yesterday's Tractors were the two places I got most of my information. The rest I got from Western Truck Repair on YouTube. So what we're going to do first, we're going to take this, we're going to submerge it in the fuel, and while it's submerged in the fuel, I'm going to get these little, that's one, two, good. We're going to put these plungers in while it's upside down in the fuel. That's one plunger. And I'll get the second one in. So she's installed underneath the fuel. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take it, we're going to put it right side up in this little tin to try and avoid getting fuel absolutely everywhere, as it is already. And we're then going to install the shoes on their rollers, or the rollers on their shoes. The shoes. Let's see what we're doing here. So the roller sits down in there, or the shoe does, sorry, and then the roller slides down into the shoe. Okay, so now they can still come out here, but that's not what we want here at the moment. First thing I'm going to do is just make sure this is still moving freely. And it is. Good, so the plungers are sitting nicely and they're moving freely. The shoes and the rollers sit in nice. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the leaf spring on. So this is the leaf spring here. There it is. And then what happens with the leaf spring is it sits on the back of the rotor here. And what it does is it pushes on the shoes here. And the shoes, when the leaf spring is pushed all the way in, can move out further. And when it's retracted all the way out, it can't. So you see how far they can move out there now? You see, I can't even get a screwdriver in behind it. However, if I tighten them all the way up, which is just a turn and a half, if I tighten that all the way, now look how loose it is. I can get the screwdriver in behind it, okay? So it changes. So what I have to do now is I have to do a pressure test. I'm going to take a air pressure hose that you can hear hissing behind you. I'm going to plug it into one of the outlet ports, and that's going to push air pressure back up through and behind the plungers, where it's going to push the shoes out. And it's going to push them out as far as it can. And then I'm going to measure that with the micrometer here and figure out if it's within tolerance. Now, the tolerance for my pump is 1.949 inches. And that is for a DBGFC 437 7AF pump. Now, your pump is probably different, and thus it has a different tolerance. Call your local pump shop, find out. That's the only way that I can find to get the information. They weren't happy to give me the information, but they did. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take that air hose, we're going to put it in here, and I'm going to press. There, and did you see it pushed out the, cramped my hand. Did you see it pushed out the rotors all the way? So, we're going to take the micrometer here. We're going to turn it on, because I'm pretty sure that's how this works. And we're going to go to inches. Perfect. We're going to slide it out to the height I want, and then back in. And that's, what does it tell me? It's 1.949, and we want 1.949. So that's perfect where it is. It has to be all the way in. So the screw needed to be all the way in. So we've got that set. We've got that done. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to set our cam ring down on top. This is our cam ring. The first, they want us to dip it in fuel oil, like everything else that goes on here. And the cam ring will sit down on top of the rollers like this. And from here, we can go ahead and install. First, I'm going to turn that micrometer off. We can go ahead and install our governor weight retainer. So on the end of the flange here, there is a timing mark. Can you see that there? You still recording? Oh, good, you are. I'm going to have to change you out soon. Your battery out soon. So there is a timing mark here, and that timing mark must line up with the timing mark on the governor weight retainer. It's right down in there. I'm not sure if you can see it. It's right there. Maybe this is better light for you. It's right there. It's at the bottom. It's just below where my screwdriver is. You see it? We've got this lined up. We've got the pressure testing done. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this cam ring out of our soaking pool. Bring it over here. And there is a mark on the cam ring, an arrow. And my arrow, the direction I want, is clockwise. Your pump might be counterclockwise, but mine, you can see that arrow there, that indicates clockwise. So I'm going to sit it down clockwise. Now you might be asking, where do you measure clockwise from? Well, It's always from looking at the drive shaft end. So here, this is the drive end of the pump. And so I'm looking at that, and that is clockwise. Does that make sense? Yes, indeed. So the next thing after the cam ring is in place is we're going to take our governor weight retainer that's been flushed in our fuel oil, and we're going to set it on the rotor. Now the rotor needs to be lined up with, there's a timing mark. You're all the way over there. There's a timing mark on the rotor, and there's a timing mark on the governor weight retainer. And the timing mark for the governor weight retainer is right there on mine. And one of the common issues that people have with this pump is their seal on the governor weight retainer. This rubber piece, it apparently disintegrates and plugs up the rest of the pump. Now, I'm not going to fix what's not broken. Mine looks to be in perfect shape, looks brand new out of the factory, so I'm not going to dick around with replacing it because it might break something. So instead, I'm going to place mine back on like so. And then the next item of business is for me to take my snap ring pliers and my snap ring. We're going to put the snap ring in the diesel, get it all nice and clean. And then we're going to take the snap ring pliers, dip them in the diesel. They recommend that everything that goes on this pump be dipped in diesel, which is strange, but that's what you do. So I'm going to take the snap ring and I'm going to position it. So all I need to do is open the ring enough to get it to slide down over the shaft. Nice. So the snap ring is in place. The marks line up. And that is all we have to do with this for now. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to tackle the rotor end. So for now, this can just sit in some fuel. So the next thing we're going to deal with is the transfer pump, or at least the shafts for it. So mine, it says CC on the back here, but that's because this side is clockwise. See, that side says C. Does that make sense? And so the pin here, this little pin, I'm not sure if you can see it right here, that pin has to line up with the groove in the collar for the transfer pump. And that's how you know it's on the correct side. So it's evening time here at the lake, and I'll show you what that looks like. It's a gorgeous evening. Just in case you were interested, what my view looks like as I work on my pump. Okay, so what's next? So the next thing is, first we're going to flush this with fuel. So we've got that back here. Now, it suggests, and if that's the top, then that makes that the bottom, which means that when this goes back in, it's going to sit like that, which means that the pin is under the C for clockwise side. So the pin will be there, which means that this wants to be down this way. And with the pin sitting there, it's going to be something like that. So I'm going to rotate the pump shaft until that comes roughly up and down. We're going to pop these out, keeping them in a big heap of stuff. Okay, so if I can fix all the other problems, I'm sure I can fix this one. First thing I'm going to do, it says, is put the sleeve in. So There's the sleeve. It just kind of sits down in there. Now you can see that it's angled. Well, that makes sense. That's how the transfer pump works. So then we're going to take these posts, and I think we're going to stick one set vertically and the other set horizontally. And with any luck, it fits together nicely like it has. And what happens when I rotate the pump? So what's happening is it scoops up fuel there near the top. It spins it around. It widens out. And then it pushes it back in on the other end. Does that make sense? Very good. So that's how that sits in place, the transfer pump. And then this is going to go on over top. What we're going to do here now is we're going to install the end plate. So how this works, you might be wondering how this works. So let's do a little demonstration. What's happening here is the pump would be like this. If you can imagine it, we're looking at this angle. So that right there, roughly, would correspond with this. Fits inside, okay? So that's directly below where it should be. We've got a new red rubber gasket in there. It's the one that came with the kit. Just gonna put a little bit of grease around there. Just a touch, maybe a touch more. So 2 touches, to be precise. 2 touches of grease on the O-ring. We're going to take that and we're going to slide it down over the screen. Oops. Just keep working it down. There we go. That one's in place. And we're just going to try and melt off some of that grease with the fuel oil. Did it work? Almost not at all. Should I be wiping it on a rag now? Probably not. Now I can take this with its little plunger inside and slide it in. Oops. Slide it in and fasten it into the in position. Oops. Put the bottom bolt on. Then there's this nice plate which has to go there and sit in its little prescribed groove. And there we have it. That's the end plate finished. Nicely flushed with fuel. So now we can put the nuts in place here, and we'll be proceeding to the next step of putting the arms in the housing, linking them in place with the pivot arm, and then finally we'll be able to slide this into the pump housing. I always find it strange how little grease you need in a tube of this size. I've had this tube now for like going on 2 years for little projects like this, and I barely touched it. My father has one that he uses 4 or 5 times a year for different projects. It's like 20 years old and he's still on the same tube. You really don't need very much, and it really goes a long, long way. Cool. That's number 4. We'll slot him into place. Nice. We're going to flip this over, and we can leave that on its end for now. The next thing we need is to put the actual weights, which are here, into the fuel oil to soak. This is the sleeve. It's the governor weight retainer sleeve. And this is the chamfered washer. And it goes chamfered, or weirdly curved edge, towards the sleeve. Chamfered sleeve, like so, and they go down in here. And so what's happening here with this pump, and this is what I think people fail to understand, is the weights will go in here, and once the weights go in here, this whole thing will go into that pump. And the way this pump works is that little pit bar that I took here, this little bar, will sit inside the housing, and it will clip on right here. Do you see these little hooks? The little hooks hook on right there to the sleeve. And as the weights come out, it moves the metering valve one way or another. It twists the metering valve one way or another, which increases or decreases fuel flow when the pump is under load. Okay? So as this twists, that changes the position of the metering valve. Okay, so I'll show you a little bit of a better view once I get the chamfered ring in place. Okay. So there's the sleeve, there's that. So what it says to do, the big fat end with the little notch, this end here, that goes down, because what happens for a cutaway side view is, and this is facing up, this sits here. You see, this goes in here like this. And what happens is, as the pump spins faster, this flyweight wants to, because of centrifugal force, it wants to move outwards, which lifts up the sleeve, okay, from underneath. I'll show you what I mean here in a moment. So I'm going to put the weights in, a couple of them, get it started here, and see if I can't get the chamfered ring in first, and then the sleeve, and we're going to slowly work our way around with these weights. Just a little puzzle game, get all the puzzle pieces to line up. There we go. Now that moves. And then we can set the governor weight retainer ring down on top. And it says if you look across it from the bottom, all the weights should be at the same height, which indicates that they're incorrect. If any one of the weights are not the same height as the others, then you done messed up. So the next step we're going to do is we're going to install this link arm inside the pump. And the reason we're going to do that is so that when we slide this into place, this will already be sitting there ready and waiting. You can see that this lines up with that hole, and that's for a reason, because that's where the little pivot arm for the metering valve goes. And the metering valve itself sits in that hole there. What we need to do is find the correct washers for this knife edge here. And so do you see there's, if we look really close at it, you can see that it's sharp on one edge here, and then on the other two edges, it's just a box. You see? So it's a box on one side, and it's concave on the other side. And it's that knife edge on that edge that can cut you, and that has all the burrs on it, that goes towards the drive shaft. So this being the drive, that slides right in there. And there is a set of washers, one there and one there, or O-rings rather, that have to be installed before we can continue. We're going to put this in place when we're ready for it. We'll slide that in, we'll tighten that down, and then we'll go ahead and attach the pump head inside the pump body. It might be sense. So how are you today? How's everyone doing? I realize that right now is an odd quarantine-y time. As I'm filming this, today is the 18th of April, and as it sits, Canada has 33,000, I think, somewhere in that vicinity, which is nothing compared to the rest of the world. So wherever you are, I hope you're safe and healthy, and if you do get it, I hope you get better soon and recover to your full strength. In any case, we're going to continue with the pump. So there's this knife edge along this blade here. So the first thing I'll do, I will grease the pump body. After greasing the pump body, I'll install this rod, knife edge towards the drive shaft, dropping this in just before. Install the O-rings, put the nuts on, and then we'll be ready to slide the rotor into the pump housing. Sound good? All right, let's get started. I'm using my favorite grease. It's this Shell Gladys stuff. Why is it my favorite? I don't know. It's the stuff I picked up off the shelf maybe 10 years ago, and I've been using a little bit ever since. This isn't my first tube. Oh, you're still here. All right, so we've got the housing all greased up. As you can see, it's nice and greasy. Look at that. Ooh, yes. All red all the way around. That's what we like to see. All the little openings all greased. Okay. Knife edge. That's this pointy, sharp edge. Faces the drive. Just trying to thread this in the... There you can see it's where it's going in. It's going across there, through the inside. There we go. Our diesel nuts, soaking in diesel. Just one, they twist on each end. Take the big fat steely head and we're going to slide it deep inside the housing. We've made sure the housing is nice and lubricated first, putting lots of jelly, it's red jelly, all over the inside. We've coated it using our fingers, making sure it's nice and wet and ready. And now we're going to take the pump head and we're going to slide it from the shaft end, slide it right in there. And we're just going to slowly just get it in. We've got to work it all the way in nice and slow. The slower the better with this kind of thing because it's really big. We got to take it slow. Make sure it doesn't cock. If it cocks, then it could shave off some metal shavings on the side, and that can ruin the housing. We don't want to ruin the housing by beating it up while we put our big head in it. So we're gonna put the head in nice and slow and make sure that it goes in one smooth shot. We want the head to stay inside the lubricated housing permanently. Just the last thing we're going to do here before we do anything else is we're going to grease this seal. This is the head gasket for the pump. And it recommends we just give it a little bit of grease all the way around. Now we can try and assemble the head into the shaft, or the head into the body. Just going to try it this way once. Okay, so that appears to be on, and it appears that you were able to do that with almost no trouble whatsoever. So, that is, the pump is back together. Shows what a little bit of lubrication does. And the next thing I'm going to do is tighten up all the little jiggly bits and pieces. First step for us, I think, is going to be to get the bolts on the bottom. So we're just going to place it directly upside down for a moment. I'm so impressed with technology, the fact that I can record this and show the world how that anybody else can rebuild this pump. Nice. Nice. Okay, beans. So you got 1 of 2, which means hopefully 2 of 2 should slide in as well. Great. So that one was 5/8, which means I'm gonna guess this one is 9/16. Yeah.
I need your if you got another one of these, or do you need it right now?
You can take that one. I don't need it anymore.
Okay.
Okay, so the next step, I believe, is to get the friendly metering valve in place. I don't think this one I'm supposed to grease. Come on. All right, if you insist. First, are my pliers clean? Yep. So the metering valve is inside now, and with that in place and the linkage sitting down on top, you can see, look how springy it is. It wants to move nice and free. It's way better than what it was before. So the next thing we've got is we've got this spindle, and the spindle holds a bunch of little pieces together. I feel like that spring goes in there. Now that all goes together as one nice little bit, and that sits on the post. They call this the idler. The throttle idler, something to do with the idle. Not entirely sure how it functions, and frankly I don't care, because I'm so far along in this project that I'm just going to put it back together the way it was before and hope that works. Oops. So what I think happens is that I slide this in there, and then not like that, but the other way. There we are. Then I apparently take my little assembly and slide it over that, like so, and then hang the other end there, like so, and then possibly tighten it down. Really coating this one with grease because I want this to slide on. I can always wipe the excess grease away afterwards. So the first thing that we're going to do here now is we're going to install the throttle linkage. Is that Mr. Raven nearby? I have made a new friend. He's a raven. I also made a new friend today in a little birdie who flew into the window, and we nursed him back to health. He was pretty stunned, so stunned that he basically wandered right over to us and into our hands. And we fed him some water and oatmeal. And he sprung back to life, and he gave us a little chirp, and he flew around us in circles, and then he flew off. So that was nice. The way my pump goes, the throttle comes on from this side, so we're just going to go slidey boop right in there. We're going to fit this over top. There we are. I know that it should fit in just like that. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that's all back together. I put the little J-clip, as you saw, back on top, and I'm 99% sure this is how this goes back together. So the next thing I'm going to do is tighten all the little bits and pieces back up. So I believe we have this back together. The first thing is to install a new seal in the head gasket. That wasn't so hard. Once you know what's happening inside something, it's usually pretty easy. Okay, and there you have it, folks. We've got the fuel pump for the bulldozer all completely rebuilt. And now we can go ahead and attach it to the machine.